On World News Tonight. Russia strikes. Ukraine says Russia struck Kyiv using missiles fired by strategic bombers. Production resumes. Baby formula plant shut down months ago, now back into manufacturing. How long until products reach shelves? Find out tonight. Fierce storms. Thunder and hailstorms hit France, ravaging vineyards and delaying flights. And the Royal Jubilee. Britain at its best as Queen Elizabeth cheered as Jubilee celebrations come to an end.
This is Derana World News Tonight. Reporting from Colombo, here is Suzanne Shanali.
Good evening and thank you for joining us on World News Tonight, and we're starting off with some breaking news. Now, Boris Johnson's time as Prime Minister has been a roller coaster, and he faces a no-confidence vote mainly over rule-breaking parties in government buildings during COVID-19 lockdowns. PM Johnson, who won a sweeping election victory in 2019, has been under growing pressure after he and staff held an alcohol-filled party at the heart of power when Britain was under strict lockdowns to tackle COVID-19. The once seemingly assailable Johnson was also attacked by one-time ally Jesse Norman, a former junior minister who said the Prime Minister staying in power insulted both the electorate and the party. The vote is supposed to be held tonight. The votes will be counted immediately afterwards, and the announcement will be made at a time to be advised. Now on to the updates of the escalating war in Ukraine. Russia struck Ukraine's capital Kyiv with missiles for the first time in more than a month, while Ukrainian officials said a counterattack on the main battlefield in the east had retaken half of the city of the Severodonetsk.
Russian missiles rocked Kyiv on Sunday, sending clouds of smoke wafting over the Ukrainian capital for the first time in more than a month. Ukraine said the strike hit a railway repair site. Moscow claimed it destroyed tanks sent by European countries. The attack comes as Russian President Vladimir Putin warned that if the U.S. were to supply Ukraine with longer-ranged missiles and artillery, Russia would respond by striking new targets. Ukraine said Russia had carried out the strike on Kyiv using long-range missiles fired from bomber aircraft. Ukrainian presidential advisor Mikhailo Podolyak tweeted, "The Kremlin resorts to new insidious attacks. Today's missile strikes at Kyiv have only one goal: kill as many as possible." The strike on the capital comes as Russia has been concentrating its firepower in a vicious battle for the eastern Donbas region. Russian forces have been trying to seize the city of Severodonetsk. After retreating steadily in the city in recent weeks, a regional governor said Ukrainian troops mounted a surprise counterattack, retaking half of it, and continued to push the Russians back. Both sides say they have inflicted huge casualties in the fight for Severodonetsk, a battle that could determine the shape of the next phase of what is likely to be a protracted war of attrition. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been begging the U.S. and NATO countries for weapons to help hold off the Russian invasion, which Moscow calls a, quote, special military operation.
We're not going to send to Ukraine rocket systems that can strike into Russia.
President Joe Biden last week said Washington would supply Ukraine with advanced rocket systems after receiving assurances the weapons would not be used against targets in Russia.
Severe weather across France as storms across large parts of France killed one woman, damaged vineyards, and forced thousands of Cub Scouts to run for shelter.
She didn't have time to react. A 30-year-old woman died on Sunday, swept by torrential rains in the northern city of Rouen. Her body was found trapped under a car. Hailstones, some roughly the size of a tennis ball, roads completely destroyed, and houses up in flames after being hit by lightning, as France experiences its most intense and widespread thunderstorms in 20 years.
All the houses were impacted, roofs, windows, tiles, everything. Not a single house in my area was left untouched.
More than 50,000 lightning strikes were recorded across France on Saturday, with a huge impact on road and rail. 15,000 households remain without electricity on Sunday. One sector that was particularly hit is the agriculture sector. This farmer saw 100 millimeters of rain flood his fields in just an hour. He lost over 80% of his production.
What can we do? I'm in total disarray today. I don't know what to do. I haven't slept. I won't sleep in the days to come. A year's worth of work that goes up in smoke in 10 minutes. It's just unacceptable.
Farmers already had to endure harsh conditions last month, with the hottest and driest weeks on record in France. An unusual heat episode made more likely with climate change. They now have to deal with the consequences of scourging hail.
Bipartisan U.S. Senate negotiations on how or if to respond to the latest wave of mass shootings are focused on a range of options, including improving school safety and red flag laws to allow police to seize guns from people deemed dangerous.
U.S. Democratic and Republican senators now wrangling over a measure to reduce gun violence are considering ways to improve school safety, expand background checks, and what are known as red flag laws. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut on Sunday told CBS News his negotiations with Republican John Cornyn of Texas include significant investments in mental health, money for school security, and, quote, modest but impactful changes in gun laws. U.S. Senator Pat Toomey, a Pennsylvania Republican member of the negotiating group, said expanding background checks were on the table, as well as red flag laws that would allow law enforcement to remove firearms from individuals deemed dangerous. The negotiations come in the wake of catastrophic mass shootings. In mid-May, an avowed white supremacist slaughtered 10, mostly African Americans, inside a Buffalo supermarket. A little over a week later, a gunman murdered 19 children and 2 teachers inside a Texas elementary school. Both shooters were 18 years old and able to legally purchase the military-style assault rifles used in the attacks.
For God's sake, how much more carnage are we willing to accept? How many more innocent American lives must be taken before we say enough, enough?
U.S. President Joe Biden last week called on lawmakers to ban assault weapons, expand background checks, and implement other gun control measures.
The fact that the majority of the Senate Republicans don't want any of these proposals even to be debated or come up for a vote, I find unconscionable. We can't fail the American people again.
Previous Democratic efforts to add restrictions on the sale of firearms have met a wall of Republican resistance. And with the Senate evenly divided between the parties, it's far from certain any bipartisan measure will advance. If lawmakers needed any reminder about the severity of gun violence in the U.S., this weekend delivered a reality check. Security camera footage shows a crowd fleeing after gunfire erupted on Philadelphia's South Street late on Saturday, which left 3 people dead and 11 injured. 3 more people died after a shooting outside a bar in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Last week, a gunman stormed a Tulsa hospital and killed 5, including himself. The Senate talks will continue into early this week when Congress returns from a Memorial Day break.
Now, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was in Indonesia to meet its President Joko Widodo and shore up relations between the two neighbours in his first bilateral visit since being elected last month. Prior to official talks, which were expected to span trade, investments, climate and regional security, the two leaders rode bamboo bicycles around the State Palace in Bogor. In welcoming remarks, President Jokowi, as the Indonesian leader is commonly known, emphasized the importance of the two nations strengthening their bilateral commitments amid current global challenges in a dynamic and challenging world. The trip comes as Australia's new Labour government, which ended almost a decade of Conservative rule in a May 21st election, puts greater focus on relations with Southeast Asia and climate change, an issue crucial to its Pacific neighbours, as it navigates ties with a more assertive China. Gunmen opened fire on worshippers and detonated explosives at Catholic Church in southwestern Nigeria, leaving dozens feared dead.
This Catholic church, St. Francis, in southern Nigeria, had long been a quiet place in a peaceful state, Ondo, until Sunday's Mass. That's when several gunmen stormed the building, shot at worshippers, and detonated explosives, killing men, women, and children. After evacuating those injured to hospital, trying to find extra blood to treat them, and taking victims' bodies to the morgue, Ondo State's governor said security forces will not rest until they find the killers.
Please, don't take the law into your hands. The perpetrators will never escape. We are after them. and I assure you we will get them. The vile and satanic attack is a calculated assault on the peace-loving people of Owo Kingdom who have enjoyed relative peace over the years.
Indeed, Ondo has been a safe state for many years, when other areas in Nigeria have been hit by repeated violence, an Islamist insurgency in the northeast, where churches have been targeted, and criminal armed gangs in the northwest, who have attacked and kidnapped for years innocent civilians for ransom.
Let's go into a short commercial break. We'll be back soon with more world news. Welcome back to World News Tonight. Now, production finally began at Abbott's facility in Michigan, but products won't hit store shelves for more than 2 weeks. The company says it will start by ramping up the production of specialty formulas for infants with food allergies. The FDA has had investigators on site for days in the facility, observing improvements made to the facility.
Abbott Laboratories said on Saturday that it has reopened its baby formula production plant in Sturgis, Michigan, taking a step toward alleviating an acute nationwide shortage that has sent parents scrambling for supplies. The company said it will begin production of EleCare and other specialty and metabolic formulas, with initial EleCare product released to consumers beginning on or about June 20th. The plant shutdown and a recall of infant formula had deepened a supply shortage in a nation where, according to federal data from 2020, less than half of babies were exclusively breastfed through their first 3 months.
There's nothing more stressful than the feeling you can't get what your child needs.
With parents growing increasingly desperate and frustrated, the Biden administration accelerated what it has dubbed Operation Fly Formula to help fill store shelves. The administration relaxed its import policy and invoked the Defense Production Act to help increase available U.S. supplies, flying in infant formula from abroad to help ease the shortage. Abbott started a recall in February after reports of bacterial infections in children who had consumed the formula made at the plant. U.S. lawmakers have criticized the Food and Drug Administration for not acting promptly to address the problems that caused the recall at Abbott's Michigan plant. Abbott has said there is no evidence to link its formulas to the illnesses, while the FDA's inspection found bacteria in environmental testing and not in the product samples.
In response to North Korea's missile launches, South Korea and the United States showed that they are not going to be toyed with. The allies fired 8 surface-to-surface missiles towards the East Sea before the crack of dawn.
South Korea's new president vowed to take a tougher stance against North Korea, and early Monday may have been a glimpse of that approach. South Korea and the US fired 8 surface-to-surface missiles, a joint military exercise that was in response to the barrage of missiles launched by the North just a day earlier. South Korea's military was cited by the country's Yonhap news agency as saying its actions demonstrate, quote, the capability and readiness to carry out a precision strike against North Korea. The South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, who took office last month, has agreed with the US to upgrade joint military drills and their combined deterrence posture. At a memorial event on Monday, he said the North posed a threat to regional and world peace.
북한의 핵과 미사일 위협은 고도화되고 있습니다.
North Korea's nuclear and missile threats are getting sophisticated. It fired various ballistic missiles yesterday. North Korea's nuclear and missile programs are reaching the level that threaten not only the peace of the Korean Peninsula, but also in Northeast Asia and the world.
North Korea has conducted a flurry of missile launches this year, but Sunday's short-range ballistic missiles were probably its largest single test to date. Washington and Seoul officials also recently warned that Pyongyang appeared ready to resume nuclear weapons tests for the first time since 2017. Last month, the US called for more UN sanctions on North Korea, but China and Russia vetoed the suggestion.
Shares of Apple slid 4%, hit by a bearish brokerage comment and a report that EU countries and lawmakers were set to agree on a common charging port for mobile devices on the June 7th, a proposal that has been fiercely criticized by the iPhone maker.
Shares of Apple fell more than 4% Friday morning, a big move lower for the tech giant, after a research note from Morgan Stanley said Apple's App Store is showing signs of slowing growth. Analyst Katie Huberty said in a note to clients Friday that, quote, while we are bullish on the longer-term App Store and services outlook, a deceleration in App Store growth and monetization could be a near-term headwind for results. Huberty added that the decline likely points to fading consumer spending on goods and services that accelerated during the global health crisis. Also weighing on the stock was a report that EU countries and lawmakers were set to agree on a common charging port for mobile phones, tablets, and headphones on June 7th, a proposal that has been fiercely criticized by Apple. That's according to people familiar with the matter, who also said the meeting next week will be the second and likely the final one between EU countries and EU lawmakers on the topic, an indication of a strong push to get a deal done. Finally, a report from Bloomberg late Thursday said Apple will make work schedules for retail staff flexible as the company looks to appease employees amid a push by workers towards unionization. Shares of Apple have fallen more than 18% this year, and Friday's decline weighed most on the broader stock market, with the S&P 500 falling nearly 2% in late morning trading.
Rafael Nadal won his 14th French Open and record extending 22nd Grand Slam title with a straight sets of rout of Casper Ruud to become the oldest male champion at Roland Garros.
Rafael Nadal has reclaimed his crown as the king of the French Open, winning a record-extending 14th title by beating Norway's Casper Ruud in straight sets. Ruud led 3-1 in the second set, which appeared to spur Nadal to raise his level and take the last 11 games. Nadal's victory came 2 days after his 36th birthday and makes him the oldest title winner in the history of the tournament. He now moves 2 ahead of his great rivals, Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic. But it was a second French Open final defeat for American Coco Gauff. France's Caroline Garcia and Kristina Mladenovic, who reformed their pair at the start of the year, won the women's doubles against Gauff and Jessica Pegula.
Welcome back to World News Tonight, and for more news, let's take you around the world in a minute. Peruvian police and protesters clashed in the country's capital, Lima, during a protest against President Pedro Castillo. Jeff Bezos' space tourism venture Blue Origin completed its 5th crew launch after issues with a backup system for its New Shepard rocket delayed a planned voyage last month. Hundreds of people gathered in Taipei to commemorate China's bloody crackdown on pro-democracy demonstrators in Beijing's Tiananmen Square 33 years ago. Intense heat wave and subsequent water shortage has forced women in India's western Nasik district to take a strenuous 3-kilometer journey in search of water. Some high school students in Shanghai were allowed to resume school on campus after in-person classes were suspended for almost 3 months to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And that's all the news we got for you tonight. Join us again tomorrow for more news around the globe. In case you have missed to watch any of the stories we aired tonight, you can always rewatch by catching us on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Derana English. We're leaving you tonight with a look at the end of the celebration of the Royal Jubilee Fest. Stay safe and have a good night.